Welcome to Legend Makers, the podcast where education's true heroes take center stage.
Shine like a ray from the sun. There's something people look for but never can find.
All right, man, we are back with the Legend Makers podcast. I've got Steve Iglesias. Steve, you're the Director of Innovation and Technology at the Doral Academy in Doral, Florida.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Scott, first of all, I want to say thanks. Thanks for having me on here, and I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, likewise, man. Likewise. How long have you been with Doral?
So I've been in Doral since 2009.
Ah.
I started as a baseball coach and a security guard. My best friend and I got into education by accident. My best friend and I owned the baseball academy, and he gets a job at the school as the head baseball coach. 3 days before school starts, he calls me and tells me, "Hey, they're looking for a golf coach. Why don't you come coach with me?" And so I was like, "Yeah, I think I could do that." So I started on here as a security guard and a coach. And about 3 months into the process, my administrator at the time, which he's the principal now, he tells me, "Hey, you seem to have a little bit of common sense. Why don't you think about becoming an administrator?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I could do that." So make a long story short, I got into the classroom for a few years after that, then became an administrator, head of discipline, head of security, head of operations. And then right around 2018, I was bored. I wanted to get out of education. I was looking for something else. I was reading a book by Peter Diamandis called Bold. And it talked about the future, talked about everything in technology, talked about, aerial taxing, biomedical engineering, AI, where the future's headed. I'm like, kids need to learn about this stuff. And so that's where it kind of led me to where I am today as director of innovation.
Wow. So the book's called Bold. So is it about technology and education, or just technology in the future in general?
So it's mainly about technology in the future in general. Peter Diamandis is the author of the book, and he actually wrote the third part of the book called "The Future's Faster Than You Think," and in there's a chapter about the future of education.
So what is his take on it? Because I'm always, as we see, when was the book written?
So the Bold, I think, was 2016 is when it came out.
Okay.
2017 around that time, and 2019, 2020 was when The Future's Faster Than You Think came out. And basically he's talking about the speed of technology and how it's converging across all industries, and how we're not doing enough to keep up in the education space to really expose these kids. There's right around that same time, Dell did a stat that basically talked about over 80% of the jobs these kids are going to have in the next 10 years. They don't exist today.
Don't exist. And this is all really pre open AI really blowing into the scene.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Which is
Talking
accelerated.
about biomedical engineering back then, talking about 3D printing homes, talking about, bioprinting, lungs and hearts and all these things back then. And it really excited me. It was like, man, nobody really ever taught me about this stuff. I think kids really need to get inspired by this. There was also a crucial point then. There was a podcast that Peter Diamandis had with Palmer Luckey, the owner of Andrew, which back then he had the Oculus Quest. He was the founder of the Oculus Quest.
Yeah.
And they're talking about the future and education and kids, and all of a sudden he looks at Peter and he's like, "Hey, we always talk about we got to tell our kids to follow their passions and their dreams, but what if today they have really crappy passions?" And the reality is that 60 Minutes did a study in this country, kids ages 14 and under, over 70% of them want to be TikTokers and YouTubers.
I know.
They took that same study in China. Over 70% of them want to be entrepreneurs, engineers, astronauts, things that are meaningful to society.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, that inspired you to take this role now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you go back to 2018, if you ask anybody in the K-12 space what technology is, the only thing they know how to tell you is robotics. So I went to my first robotics competition. I went there, it was cool to see 80 teams from all over the state of Florida competing against each other. But I was really like, what if we can teach these kids how to use technology to solve a real world problem? And that kind of became the crux around every single program that we started introducing here, whether it be obviously robotics and engineering, whether it be video game design and development, AI, cybersecurity. It's all, for a purpose, to solve a real world problem.
Absolutely. Tell me more about your program. I'm interested because this is cool because I think that is true. It's not just the technology, but it's linking the technology to solutions and real world application. And
Sure.
so, yeah, give me a taste of what you're doing there.
Sure. So early on, we started an innovation club, and it started
Uh-huh.
kind of like as an after school thing. Um, we had kids that were coming after school wanting to learn more. And basically we just started looking for problems. Right around that time in 2018, we had the incident at Parkland, the school shooting at Parkland here, like
Mm-hmm.
40 minutes north of us. And obviously it was devastating. It hit close to home. It was right there. And wanted to take that moment and use it as fuel to, hey, how can we inspire these kids? This is a problem. How can we solve it? And so we started the whole design engineering and designing process, iterating process, thinking about how we can use technology to solve this particular problem that hit close to home. Um, and so we came up with an automated code red lockdown system in this innovation lab, proof of concept. So basically, with the press of a button, we could tint the windows, lock the doors, and turn off the lights. That
Oh,
project
cool.
over the years continued to iterate. They added and competed in Samsung Solve for Tomorrow. They added a TensorFlow AI camera, and later now a fleet of drones that basically, when that panic button is pressed, they fly up into the sky, and the cops have eyes in the sky right away.
Cool. So they've automated drones now doing it as well.
Yeah,
Drone surveillance.
so
There you
it
go.
went from early on doing those types of things as a extracurricular to really promoting, this need and building these STEM pathways. And so we obviously
Hmm.
robotics was already there, so we used that as fuel, and then went from from sixth grade all the way to senior year, a pathway into robotics and engineering. Later, then we went another year. We went and we focused on video game design and started the process of using fundamentals of coding to really teach
Mm.
kids how to using the video game as an incentive, as the bait to get kids to learn how to code. And it started as early as sixth grade. We were teaching kids how to code in C++ using
Hmm.
object-oriented programming to get them to eventually work in Unreal Engine, where now they're working in Unreal Engine 5. They're working in Unity, Blender, Maya, Unreal, all industry softwares that they're using now to create digital assets for the metaverse, or they're using it to create video games. Um,
So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, I'm just sitting here listening to you talk and I'm going, okay, so you went from being a golf coach
Yeah.
to this. Like that's a big leap. I mean, that's about as far a leap as I can. Were you technical? I mean, did you have an aptitude for this? So how does one become the director of innovation and technology from being a golf instructor and a baseball guy? I mean, so I'm just trying to bridge the gap there. Tell us how that happens. And by the way, is this your lab behind you?
So this is our software side of the innovation side.
Beautiful. So
We have
go
a
back to
platform
your story. How do you get from golf? Because the reason I ask it is I ask it for a very specific reason. Because if somebody's listening and they don't see themselves in this role, right? Like, yeah, it would, boy, wouldn't that be neat if only. But clearly, I want to know how you got from golf to director of innovation and technology.
So I think that's a great question, and this is something I emphasize when I go around the country and speak a little bit. Just like you said, I was a golf coach. I was a baseball guy. I had like never in my wildest dreams would I have ever have thought I'd be a director of technology and innovation. And right around that time when I was reading that book, I said, you know what? Let me dive into this. I kind of have an interest for this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just dove right in and I looked at what was happening in the real world. I try to mimic what's happening in the real world, bring it down. And it wasn't like, I woke up one day and had all this knowledge. No, I wanted to go for it. I wanted to look for it. I was just eager to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And something that really like after looking back, I was like, man, I really have a passion for this. How was I
Mm-hmm.
not exposed to any of this when I was in middle school and high school? Um, and so,
Right.
as a matter of fact, I was actually pushed away from technology because I didn't have the right math scores. Obviously, 25 years ago, technology was a lot different, looked a lot different than what it looks like
Yeah,
today.
sure.
But that's kind of like what I'm on a mission on to do is help expose these kids at a much younger age. I think the recipe right now that we have in education today is get good grades, go to a good college, and in college you'll figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. I think that's too late. As fast as things are changing, we need to
Mm,
give kids experiences. I always say, we in education, I think we got to stop thinking we're the gatekeepers of information.
yeah.
And what are the experiences that we're providing for these kids? Information you can get anywhere. If you want to learn how to code in Python, you can go on YouTube and learn.
Tell GPT to show you how to do it. I mean,
And
seriously, to that point, I love it. I love the experiences thing. I'm with you. I think that experiences are going to far outweigh just rote learning. Information's everywhere. I will argue that pretty soon it'll just be embedded in your head. It'll just be implanted.
it's
Neuralink
sometimes
style.
sometimes it's a little scary, but when you want to learn something, it's amazing how fast you can consume things. So like honestly, like I stopped watching sports. I stopped watching playing golf, and I got
Mhm.
consumed by this, and becoming an expert at this, which you can never be. But I wanted to learn more. I wanted to be able to bring these experiences to these students at a much
Mm.
younger age. And then, now we have programs in artificial intelligence. Now we have a program in cybersecurity, right? And the future is changing so much, and this tech is shaping it because it's converging. All these technologies are converging across every industry, and it's growing exponentially. And so
How did you? Yeah, go ahead.
if we don't expose these kids, the gap is gonna be huge.
Huge, huge. So, how do you? A couple questions then. I'm trying to pull this all together because this is awesome. How do you get? I know the video games are one I use. Obviously, I'm a drone dude, and the drones are a nice little shiny way to get them in too. I think we speak the same language when we have a means to a greater end. And so for you, you mentioned, I think you said video games are a bright, shiny way to get kids in, and then I can do a whole lot of things with them once I've got their attention, right? Because to your point, you made the stat, 80% of them want to be TikTokers and YouTubers. So how do you grab those kids and say, no, 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 let's show you what technology, how we can bring you into the technology space. And I think there's some element to the TikTok and YouTube kind of algorithm stuff. I mean, there's a play there, the video gaming. So tell me how you get those kids, because we know the STEM kids are the STEM kids. We know those folks, right? I mean, they're going to gravitate to that stuff anyway. They're naturally pull into it. How do you get the other kids in? Because I think that's the bigger challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And great question. It's a challenge I'm facing myself. And I think our system has a lot to do with it. We're very much a college prep school. We send,
Mhm.
100% of our kids to university, top universities. 2 years ago, we had 3 kids get accepted to MIT, Harvard, Stanford, Yale,
Nice.
all,
Nice.
all over the country. And so who are the STEM kids? The kids that are interested in going to these top universities. And so
Hmm.
we lose kids in our program because they're so busy taking so many AP classes that they don't have a choice to take just a robotics elective or just a
Mm.
cybersecurity elective. I always tell a story of this one kid that we had in 2017. Everybody knew that he wanted to be in tech. I mean, everybody did. And that kid in high school, middle school and high school, only took 2 tech classes, AP Computer Science and AP Computer Science Principles. And it's
Mm.
because it had that AP attachment to it. But he goes to Stanford. He was top of his class. He gets an internship at Stripe. They ask him back again in his senior year. He graduates, and now he's working for Stripe, leading an AI and fraud department at 24 years old. But in
Wow.
my opinion, we hindered that kid because imagine
Yeah.
how better he'd be at Stripe, already being exposed to all this stuff at a much earlier age.
In the experiential level and earlier. Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Getting that tweaking that bug early, right?
there's another gentleman that I ran into, started a platform called Human Cloud. And he's like, Steve, I did everything by the book. I was top of my class. I was a all-state athlete. I went to Stanford. I was top of my class at Stanford. Majored in computer science, and I forgot what else. Finished in 5 years with a master's. Went to my first interview at Microsoft, expecting my $350,000 starting salary, and the guy was like, "This is the most unbelievable resume that we've ever come across. However, we're looking for somebody with a little bit more experience." The,
Experience.
the guy looked at
Right.
them, the guy looked at them, and they were like,
Mm.
"How was I supposed to do that?" right? And so he ended up going to work for a startup, ended up going back and
Hmm.
working for Microsoft, and then had this idea of getting kids in college internship or micro internships, and ends up starting his company.
Wow.
I think
So
we got to do that at a much younger age and help kids launch at a much younger age.
what's young? Tell me where you think it starts. All the way back in kindergarten?
So I think the skill sets that we need for the future, you can start early as starting in elementary with some of these skill
Hmm.
sets,
Hmm.
starting building them on off. We start as early as sixth grade teaching these kids C++, and they can take it, they can handle it.
Yeah.
It's just about exposure. It's about making it meaningful to them. Uh, and like for example, in our robotics two classes, right? In robotics two, we're using Fable Robotics, and in there they're using AI and algorithms of the computing power of the phone that they're using for these to build these robots. And so you're exposing kids to AI at in the seventh grade, and coding for AI in the seventh grade.
Yeah.
And as long as they're building projects that's meaningful to them, it works. I believe the sixth through 12th grade recipe is what works. You
Hmm.
have,
Hmm.
from sixth to eighth grade to mold them, get them the fundamentals, and then from there on, the sky's the limit. Once they can hit high school running, if that makes sense.
Totally. Do you to go back to the kids, when I think about, you have a passion for this, it's clear. So uh, did you were you I'm thinking about, I can see where coaching may have led you to. Did you always have an affinity for wanting to bring out the best in children and people? Is that kind of like your passion? Like, what drives you to do this? Clearly, you're passionate about it. I'm trying to get to the heart of what drives you. Like, what's your motivating factor? What's your North Star kind of thing?
Well, I think sports, to me, I credit everything to sports. I mean, obviously, I had a decent academic background. But what I learned in sports, I think transfers over to everything I do in my daily life today.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a downside I see in today's generation. The resiliency factor is not there. You see it. There's a clear separation between the athletes, the kids that do play sports. They're a
Mm-hmm.
lot more resilient than your kid that doesn't do any sports or any after school activities. And I think you can build those qualities with these types of programs. For me, I think what fuels me honestly is how, I don't want to say the neglect, but how I was turned away from what I found now to be my passion at
Mm-hmm.
such a young age, and how I was not exposed
Yeah.
to stuff at a much younger age. When I was in college, I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to become a sports agent. I was going to marry baseball and becoming an agent. I'm like, my whole life is made up.
Mm.
Um, I had gotten an internship opportunity like my summer going into my junior year in college. And my second day on the job working for this agent, I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. At this
Really?
point in my career, I'm like almost becoming a junior. I'm like, what am I going to do now? So I
Why,
just
why, why, why couldn't you do it? What was it about it? It
It's-
just
I,
wasn't for
I
you?
I was just totally turned off by it. You had to, be behind players, sometimes embellish a little bit too much. I just me witnessing what that guy did on a daily basis. I
It
wanted
wasn't for
nothing.
you.
It was not
It
for me.
wasn't for you. Yeah.
Um, Imagine had I been exposed to that at a much smaller scale, much younger, I would have been a lot more efficient during my college days, right?
Interesting.
and and
Interesting.
so and so seeing an opportunity where the world is changing so fast, just to give these kids a chance with, just let's talk about AI, right? um
Yeah.
if we're not exposing them now, everybody worries about the digital divide back then. Like, this AI gap is going to be massive between the
Huge.
kids
Mhm.
that know how to use AI and the kids that do not know how to use AI.
I
uh
agree with you.
and it's not just kids, it's us in society,
Everyone.
everyone, right?
It's
um
everyone.
so it's crucial, and I think that's what kind of motivates me and drives me, because I see the opportunity. I see the need for it, and I think we're at an inflection point where we're going to come back 25 years from now and say, hey, this was the time.
Hmm. Interesting. You said something. about sports, and I'm with you. I went to a school called Hyde School in Bath, Maine, back in the '80s. I was sent there, but it was a character education school, and sports was front and center, and everybody had to play sports. 3 a year, right? I played football, wrestle, and lacrosse, and I draw on that all the time. I think about my wrestling. When I'm in a hard situation, I can go back and I can pull on some of the things I did when I wrestled, from dieting and maintaining weight to rigorous trainings and things like that. But so then when those for I think what I'm getting at is, and you made the other comment, then you piggybacked on that with after school programs and enrichment programs. I'm thinking about esports and what the esports world has done for the non-physical um, ability to compete, be part of a team, all of those good, all of the good stuff that comes along with being an athlete, all that character building and all that kind of grit and determination, and some of the things, the iteration and learning how to fail, learning how to win, learning how to be part of a team, learning how to share in success. The esport community's done a really nice job of explaining and showing and backing it up with data how it has the same kind of effect as would a person playing on like a football team or a soccer team. Um, they're sharing. I've seen data that'll say. Do you share that? Do you agree with that assessment?
1,000%. I mean, these types of programs that mimic the real world, where you're getting so many more intangible qualities and skill sets out of these. In robotics, when we're building our projects that they work in teams, there's a bank. They got to use every piece has a certain price to it. So you can't just
Mm,
use an abundant amount of things. It's reality. You got to budget for it. You got to work in teams. You got to learn how to communicate. You got to project manage. You got to do a lot of so many intangibles that you need in the real world. And I think the hardest thing for education to make the switch right now, Scott, is how do you prepare these kids for a world where we have no idea where it's going, right?
mhm,
What we
mhm.
do know, what we do know is that we need these kids resilient. What we do know is that we need these kids to think critically. Right now, when we used to Google, we used to have to sort through a list of options. Now, when you open AI or when you chat GPT or you use Grok, you're getting it from one source, and we got to teach these kids how to think critically for that, not just to take things for as they are. Um,
Yeah.
we need kids to work in teams and communicate. These are the skills that I think we need to move forward with. And schools just need the right KPIs to
Mm.
incentives to push these types of programs forward. Right now, you don't have that.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're speaking my language. I mean, that's why I'm smiling, because I couldn't agree with you more. It's amazing. I think it's exactly. You said it before. Information is abundant. Those skills, I'd argue with, like you do, that AI and other things like that are going to displace students rapidly. And so I think we need to have the kind of the self worth, um, ability to pivot, to adapt, to remain flexible. It's gonna be like navigating a maze as they get older. There's gonna be a lot of times where they might be moving in a certain direction, and you might find that job doesn't exist anymore, but new ones open, right? And so if you don't know how to become flexible and how to become adaptable and have some of those character qualities, you're going to fall behind. You might get frustrated. You might get lost in the shuffle versus somebody who was trained in that to have that kind of continence, that they're going to be able to move forward. They're going to be able to say, well, look, that door may be closing, but look over here, three more are opening. And it's a mindset thing, but it comes with the experiences that you're trying to build into your programs that show kids how to cooperate, collaborate, communicate, and remain flexible and enjoy. You said it earlier too, and I want to go back to this. Is you said if you like this, you seem to have a passion for learning, right? How do you build? I've always thought that if you can really love learning, you'll be great. Like if you love the process of consuming information and understanding, like starting something new, like that's an exciting thing, right? Where you can say, all right, I've got a clean slate. I want to learn how to program. I want to learn how to really understand and use AI. I want to see what I can do with it. How far can I take myself with that kind of a tool. And then learn, and becoming a lifelong learner. I think that's what you're trying to do, is get kids really excited about just becoming lifelong learners.
Yeah, and you know, at the beginning of every year, I walk into these classes, and the things that we talk about are, for example, Tesla, right? We're headed to
Right.
automated cars, right? What does that
Yeah.
do to the car industry? Okay, let's think about that. Now everybody's on autonomous vehicles. What's the point of car ownership? Who's You get into an accident, who's responsible for the insurance? Are you driving, or is the robot driving? Why does a car need to look like the way it looks like if
Right.
you're not driving the car? It could be a hotel on wheels. Your trip to Walt Disney World can actually start from your home, right? You get a Disney car that sends an autonomous vehicle to your house, and now you're starting that trip already. These are the things that we got to start showcasing to our kids, how this
Yeah.
future looks so different, because they're going to be the ones that are going to create it. They're going to
Absolutely.
be the ones that are going to have to solve these problems. Now, let's look from a security standpoint. If everybody's on autonomous vehicles, how important is cybersecurity, right?
Huge.
So we
Yeah.
need to make these kids aware. And I don't think we're doing a good enough job of doing that
No.
and into that yet.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm just thinking about the autonomous cars. Think about the infrastructure requirement. I mean, right now, our roads are designed for self-driving, human driving cars. Think about traffic lights, and you wouldn't need them anymore. If everybody's on the same grid, everything's those arteries don't get clogged. Traffic jams become, quite honestly, a thing of the past. You're more efficient because there's no bottlenecks. There's no this is why traffic happens, right? Somebody pumps a brake. Oh, well, everybody starts pumping brakes in sequence, right? Or there's a merge, and humans being humans don't let people in. This one doesn't let, so all of a sudden it starts to back up. But when you have a flow of the grid, think of that. Think of the opportunity to build that system, like what that could look like, and how insanely cool that would be.
These are the things that we need to start showing our kids.
Yeah.
So Palmer Lucky thinking about playing video games with Oculus. Now he's you know, the head of a tech defense company. You know,
Yeah.
like these getting kids in front of these drones and submarines that they're building, and getting them to be inspired by this is really what we need to do. And I kind of, you know, I kind of argue a little bit, like in the next 5 to 10 years with AI, with information, this rate of speed of how everything is accelerating, you know, is it more important what to learn, or is it more important how to learn? And in K-12, I
Boom.
think how to learn should be the main focus, right? I think education, if the education does one thing really, really well, is figuring out what these kids are not good at, right? And harping on their lack and what they're missing and their problems and this and that, versus we should be giving them their experiences where we can fuel their strengths, find their passions, and help them learn. Because the day of go to school, get good grades, go to college, and then you'll work for one company for 40 years have been long gone.
On.
We will have
So
to
how do you do it?
we will have to learn how to reinvent ourselves every 4 to 5 years.
So how do we do that in schools? So for the supers listening, I mean, and administrators and owners, and where does it start? How do we start? I mean, it feels to me like, you know, we've all I can say is here in New Jersey, all of our after school programs are getting decimated. And it's like we're moving backwards, it seems like. It's like, why aren't we? What happens to our robotics program? What happened to our STEM electives? What happened to our STEM after school enrichment? It's like, how do we get? It feels like the whole thing needs to be kind of blown up and reconfigured, because it is an archaic, antiquated, early 1900s, kind of early 20th century model to create a compliant workforce for the industrial revolution, right? That's really where the roots of this thing all sit, and we're still, but then you see, and here's the thing, and then I look behind you, and I talk to you, and it's happening. I mean, your kids are benefactors of what you're doing over there. How do we do more of this?
Yeah, I think you're seeing that not struggle, but that debate happening now. You're seeing the fight for school choice. You're seeing a lot more innovation in states that have school choice with the public charter, private, micro schools, homeschooling, alpha schools, right? So you're seeing a lot of innovation, and I think for the most part, I think in education, we're constantly looking for playbooks and the hacks and the systems that are already successful to just copy and paste. Well, we're going into times that there's no rule book yet, right? We
Yeah.
have to create it. So we have to look at what's working, look at what's not working, and then continue to fuel and innovate forward. In my eyes, all I'm really doing is take what's happening in the real world and copy pasting it and bringing it down here. Early on when we created this innovation lab, one of these rooms back here was 2019 when we finished. The focus of the world was the metaverse. I mean, we were all gonna
Mhm.
educated in virtual reality glasses, goggles, or whatever.
Yeah.
And a year and a half later, NFTs crashed and the metaverse went to hell. And it was all about AI. And so we pivoted. Not that we dropped the metaverse Web3 program, but
Yeah.
put a little bit more emphasis on AI and making it about AI. So schools need to learn how to, okay, this didn't work. How do we fix it? How do we move quickly into the next thing?
Mhm.
So it's going to take a lot, but again, until I think there are the right incentives or KPIs in place, you're gonna see the one-offs like Doral
Yeah.
Academy
Yeah.
that are just doing this for the kids versus okay, now we're forced to learn how do we make this happen? How do we build our school so that it's future ready? How is tech integration? If there's KPIs around those things, what kind of STEM programs am I, what kind of AI adoption policies am I putting into place? How future ready are my kids? Until we have that, I don't think you're going to see mass adoption.
Hmm. That's a shame because a lot of kids are going to get left behind.
Well,
Um,
to be honest with you, I just think they're just doing it on their own already.
well, there's that, right? I mean, there is that. School is part of it. But it's good to see educators like yourself that'll spark that ability to go back and do more because the information's out there, right? So you get kids that are really fired up, and I think that's the greatest role of the teacher is to inspire those kids to become curious, to stay curious. So to that end, what do you say to we need a great teacher force, right? So, you hear about this teacher shortage and how do we get those that are on the fence? Think about it. So like let's now we're talking to the listener here and it's a person he or she has been contemplating becoming a teacher. Maybe it's in their bones, they feel it, but they're a little nervous. They're not sure if it's right. They hear the stories, they hear this, they hear that, whatever they hear, right? What do you say to those people? What's your advice to somebody just thinking about it or just getting started?
Yeah, I think somebody wise, a mentor to me, once told me that when everybody's looking this way or running this way, turn around and look that other way. And teachers are flooding out of the industry, and rightfully so. I mean, just think about just the last 5 years alone, what an educator's had to become: Secret
Mm,
Service agent, mental health expert, sanitation specialist, Eric Fauci, and the list goes on and on and on. And none of this we went to school for. And we're doing
mm,
things simply to CYA, right?
mm,
And so, how do we get teachers back to doing what they do best, which is educating, and I think that in the future that's going to look at a little bit different. It no longer needs to be the sage on the stage. It needs to be
mm,
the teacher that's just there to inspire, that's there to pick out the qualities of kids that are the strengths, that are project managers, that are looking at what's happening in the real world and really, doing professional development to bring what's relevant in the classroom. I think the private sector more than ever today is asking for it. They're getting these kids fresh out of college and they're saying whatever they just learned is obsolete. We got to retrain them anyway. And so you're
mm,
seeing innovations in with like Palantir starting a fellowship where they're saying, hey, let's skip the university system. Let's go after
mm.
high school kids. So I think you're gonna see a lot of these different things bubble up. And
Yeah,
I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think there's a lot of different options. And as parents, I think it's more important than ever to kind of get educated behind all the different options and know your kid and know what's best for your student.
absolutely. Didn't Dyson start his own academy? The vacuum cleaner. He did, right? He was like,
There,
look, I need awesome engineers. I don't trust the system. I'm going to bring them in and we'll pay them. We'll actually pay them to get an education. How about that? We'll flip it on its head.
There's a few different folks that, I mean, Elon at Tesla has started his own school for his SpaceX employees and Tesla employees. And there, there's been a few out there that are doing it, and this is good. This is great to see that
Yeah.
there's a lot of innovation happening, and we just have to take what's working, find those KPIs, and then fuel it.
What do you think? So if I'm a teacher, new teacher, or I'm like you years ago, getting into this and getting the bug, and we'll post this link to this bold book and others. You've mentioned some cool resources here. Like, what do you? It could seem frustrating, right? To say I'm going to enter into the school. How can you make a difference as an educator, especially one that wants to do what you're doing? Like, it's a challenge, right? So do you have any advice for somebody that wants to do what you're doing but doesn't even know where to get started?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. I think the approach that we took was just a little bit at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we looked up now 7 years later from when we started this endeavor of exposing these kids and building these STEM programs, and we have this vast majority of equipment and technology. But we didn't always start that way, right? It started
Yeah.
with one program at a time. We started as an after school activity, and now have a robust. I mean, look, we have a biomedical engineering program where we now have over
Wow.
200 mice that we have these kids studying longevity on. And they're basically they got peer reviewed and published in high school last year. They have different actual live studies that NAD boosters, resveratrol, and all these different things that are happening in the field today. And they're doing that same research. I didn't know when we started, we didn't know any of that. We
Mm.
explored this stuff with the kids. Always, we had a biology teacher that walked alongside them and knows a lot in that space. But I think as teachers too, sometimes we think we have to give them the answers for everything and help them along the way.
Mhm.
We have to teach them how to figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. For
And
sure.
and I think that's where the motto of being the sage on the stage is kind of outdated.
Mhm.
And we need to have these teachers that truly want to be there and inspire kids and bring reality to them, basically.
So Doral is private?
Charter
Is it
school.
charter? You're charter. So I'm thinking about how awesome that lab looks. And I've walked into many, many different schools over the course of the last 5 years, and some look very different than others, right? Some look like that, and others look like metal detectors as you're walking through the front door. I've been there. Um, what do you do about budgets, and how do you fund your programs? How are you funding? And then you're right, you start small, right? It doesn't have to be Rome wasn't built in a day. I'm sure you started off limited budgets and you started, well, we'll do this little program here as an after school program. How are you funding yours, and where do people go to get funding? And I mean, that might look very different in the next year or this coming year because things are all changing right now as we speak. We don't know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we have a rather large school. We have 4,200 kids on our campus. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason we have that is so we can have the hefty budget that we have to offer experiences to these students.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for us, having a lean budget to be able to invest in all this stuff was something that we have available and have the resources to do so. There's also tons of grants that are
Mm-hmm.
available, especially when it comes to technology. There's a lot of things happening here in South Florida, in Miami in particular. Right after COVID, we had our famous mayor, Mr. Francis Suarez, that sent out that tweet that brought pretty much everybody from Silicon Valley
Mm-hmm.
here to Miami. And so you have a tons of companies that have been driven to Miami. So it's like the perfect storm. You have a lot going on here. So when
Nice.
when you look at how Silicon Valley became Silicon Valley, you had three big factors that came into play. You had education, you had government, and you had the capital, the private capital,
Private sector,
investment
yeah,
capital
sure.
come in, right? Education was the first in their sector, private capital was the last, and you had government that was already on board. If you look at the Miami situation, we have the private capital, we have the government on board. What we were missing was the education piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
now we're at the point where we have private sector companies working it with the education, even the K-12 system, to really make these partnerships happen
Great.
so that we can boost a lot of these efforts in tech.
That's cool. That's really cool. It's good to hear. I hope I would like to see more of it around the country. But yeah, you're right. You're in a good spot right there.
But that is what it's going to take. It's going to
Yeah.
take private public partnerships within these local communities, and that means schools are going to have to go out and reach out to these private sector companies to show them these types of programs and how they could build their future workforce,
or help us start one so that we're, if you're here, we want to start to build the workforce for you of the future. And truly, and those are critical thinkers, right? It's not just assembly line workers. We need critical thinkers, smart, curious, adaptable, flexible people,
digital
right?
natives, scientific researchers,
Yeah.
computational science. The list goes on, but we got to expose them at a much younger age.
Cool. Yeah, I got it. Hey, question for you in future. So when you think about the future part of Bold, I like to always kind of leave on a high note, right? Like I like where your head is. I like your attitude. I think you're excited about the future, which makes me excited. What are you excited about moving forward? Like, where do you see? And I think in terms of education, like let's couch it in terms of, hey, I'm in this education space, and here's what I'm seeing, and this is what gives me hope. This is what makes me excited about where we're going, or what the possibilities are, right?
I think what makes me excited about all this is we're forging the way forward, right? We get to get in front of these kids, inspire them. When you look back at the space race, who were the heroes and champions of society? It was the astronaut, right? It was the scientists leading to Apollo, to all of that. We're in that point now. We just got to define those champions of today's society that are building these things and help these kids, inspire them to solve the next generation of problems. So again, what motivates me is just that we're literally writing history.
That's cool. That's cool. Any last word, any advice for those teachers out there? Any parting words you want to give? A good pep talk to anybody feeling a little down, feeling a little frustrated by the current state of affairs, and a lot of education's been shaken up over the last few months. I know I just attended some conferences and people are feeling a little uncertain of where things are headed and what the education system is going to look like moving forward. Any words of encouragement or pep talk that we can give?
I think this too shall pass, right? Like,
yeah.
I look at everything in cycles. We passed a really hard cycle with COVID. I mean, nobody knew what we were kind of doing. We were just kind of adapting. And if you stuck around in education, I think, you made it. You did what you had to do. What you do doesn't go unnoticed. These kids are literally not just listening to what you say, but they're watching what you do. And I think there's no greater time to be that spark. Just think about, who was it when you were in middle school and high school that lit that spark in you or gave you that belief? Maybe you were that kid that just needed somebody to say, hey, you can do it, or hey, you're good enough. So, keep that in mind, because it's not always the big thing that makes the biggest impact. It's that little thing that goes a long way.
I'm gonna leave it right there, man. That was awesome. I love it. Stick through this. This too shall pass. Steve, really nice to meet you today. This was a great one. I enjoyed this quite a bit. Thank you for coming on today. This was awesome.
I did too, Scott. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care. Bye.